They built a water pipeline straight through my ranch without even asking. Bulldozers showed up one morning, tore down the oak tree I'd planted for my late wife, and the woman in charge, Carla Withers, just smirked behind the sheriff she'd brought along. That was the day I decided if they were going to steal from me, I'd take something back, and when I did, they'd all go dry. I'd lived on that land for nearly 20 years. 20 acres of pasture, creek, and peace, bought after my wife Claire passed away. It was supposed to be a place where the world couldn't reach us. My granddaughter Elise grew up there after her parents died. It wasn't just property, it was memory carved into dirt and roots. That morning, when I saw men in orange vests hammering stakes into my grass, it felt like a trespass on more than just soil. I asked who sent them. They didn't even look up. HOA easement extension, one of them muttered. "I'm not in your HOA," I told him. "Never have been." He shrugged like I was invisible. "Tell it to them. We've got a work order." 3 days later, she showed up, Carla Withers, president of the Lakeside Meadows Homeowners Association. Tight blazer, tighter smile, a clipboard gripped like a weapon. She had 2 deputies with her for backup, as if a 60-year-old rancher fixing a fence was some kind of threat. "Mr. Travis," she said, not a hint of warmth. "We're here about the community pipeline project. Construction begins Monday. This is private land," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You've got no right." "Oh, we do," she replied, waving papers like Holy Scripture. "There's a loophole in the old county records public utility clause. Perfectly legal." Then she smiled, that smug kind of smile that says she's already won. And maybe she had. I spent days calling lawyers, burning through what savings I had left. One finally met me for coffee, skimmed the documents, and sighed. "She's not wrong," he said. "It'd take a fortune to fight this, and you'd probably lose." I walked out of that diner hollowed out. All I had was a deed, and they had bulldozers, lawyers, and the law. When the machines came, it was dawn. The rumble hit before I even had coffee. I stood on my porch with Elise beside me, her small hand gripping mine while a yellow blade rolled toward the ridge, toward Claire's oak. I wanted to run out there to stop it, but all I could do was watch as steel met wood and the tree cracked like a gunshot. Elise buried her face in my side. I didn't cry. I just felt something in me shift, grief turning to something colder. I tried one more time to reason. I went to their monthly HOA meeting. Sterile room, fake smiles, the air smelling like chlorine and control. I stood up, explained the land. The creek, how it wasn't just dirt, it was our home. I barely got 2 minutes before Carla raised a manicured hand. "Thank you, Mr. Travis," she said, dripping with politeness, but the decision's made. Her lawyer handed me a cease and desist order. She leaned forward. "You'll still have access to the main water feed as a courtesy." A courtesy. On my own damn land. When I walked out of that meeting, I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just an old man clinging to memories. That night I sat on my porch staring at the dark pasture, wondering if I'd lost my mind fighting something I couldn't win. For the first time I thought about selling, about leaving. Then Elise came out, sat beside me, and said softly, "Grandpa, it doesn't feel like home anymore." That hit harder than any lawsuit could. I wasn't just fighting for land, I was fighting for her. In the parking lot earlier, a man had caught up to me. "Mike, a tired-looking neighbor. Don't let her break you," he'd whispered. "She's done this to everyone. Fines, threats, you name it. And the kicker, her brother's the contractor getting paid for that pipeline." That stuck with me. The route they were digging looked odd, cutting across rock instead of the easy flat. I decided to see where it led. A few days later, I followed the trench. It snaked across my field, then veered sharply toward the hills. I kept walking until I heard it, the gurgle of water. Not the creek on my land, but a smaller spring bubbling up from a thicket on the old Miller property next door. The real source. The HOA wasn't drawing from public land, they were stealing from a private spring. And that property, it was in foreclosure, up for auction in 2 weeks. That night, I sat at my desk staring at the county auction listing. The starting bid was low, but to me it might as well have been a mountain. Every penny I had left. I sold my old tractor, cashed in savings bonds Claire and I bought when we married, even pulled from my veterans account. Elise found me one evening sitting in the glow of the computer. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, "but I'm more scared of doing nothing." 2 weeks later, during the online auction, my hands shook as I typed in the final bid. The screen flashed, "Sold." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. I'd just bought the source of their precious water supply. George Lindell, a hydrologist I used to work with, came over the next morning. We hiked to the spring, studied the flow. "Well, Jack," he said, "they built a straw to drink your milkshake, but they stuck it in your neighbor's glass." That was all I needed to hear. We spent the next few days clearing out the old natural channel, letting the water flow back the way it used to, downstream, away from their pipeline. No sabotage, just nature correcting itself. By noon the next day, the calls started. Trucks speeding through the gated community sprinklers, sputtering lawns, dying by the minute. Carla's empire of manicured grass was drying up. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, watching the chaos roll in from a distance. Then her silver SUV came tearing up my drive, dust flying. She slammed the door and stormed toward me. "What did you do?" she shrieked. "You sabotaged public utilities. That's a federal crime." I didn't stand, just handed her a notarized deed. "That's my property now," I said calmly, "and here water rights filed in 1957. She read the paper, her face draining of color. You can't do this." "I already did," I said. "You built your pipeline on a lie, Carla. The water you stole, it's mine." A week later, the HOA held an emergency meeting. I showed up with a folder under my arm. The clubhouse was packed, residents furious, sweaty, tired of dry taps. Carla tried to spin it as a geological shift. I waited for the yelling to die down, then walked to the front. One by one, I laid the documents on the table, my deed, the water rights, the real survey maps. Then I leaned into the mic. "There was no geological shift," I said. "You just built a pipeline to water you never owned." George stepped up, explained the hydrology of the valley. Simple, undeniable. The crowd turned, eyes narrowing toward Carla. Someone shouted, "You used our money for this." Then another voice, "Kick her out." A motion was made, a vote of no confidence. Nearly every hand went up. Carla was removed on the spot. But power addicts don't quit easy. A few nights later, I woke to the sound of an engine near the spring. I grabbed my flashlight and called the sheriff. Through the trees, I saw her, Carla, mud-splattered, trying to use a backhoe to dam the channel we'd cleared. She was desperate, clumsy, ripping into the earth. Then the bank gave way, and a surge of muddy water flooded a nearby pasture. I caught it all on my trail camera. When the deputies arrived, one of them recognized me. It was the same young officer who'd stood behind her that first day. He watched the footage I showed him, her cutting my gate lock, operating the backhoe. Then he sighed, the sound of a man realizing the paperwork he'd signed months ago had just come full circle. "Ma'am," he said to Carla, "put your hands behind your back." She screamed, accused me of setting her up, but he just shook his head. "You're under arrest for trespassing, destruction of property, and tampering with a waterway." And as he led her away, the news van I'd called earlier pulled up. Cameras lit the scene, Carla in handcuffs, covered in mud, yelling that I'd ruined everything. I looked straight into the lens. "Not everything," I said. "Just the part you never earned. That's where it ends. No celebration, no applause, just silence, and the sound of running water flowing exactly where it belongs." Lesson: power built on arrogance always collapses under its own weight.